The morning sunlight slanted across the quiet cul-de-sac, soft and golden, the kind of light that made even the dullest houses look like postcards. The world was still waking up. A distant lawnmower buzzed, a dog barked somewhere, and the air smelled faintly of cut grass and dew. Jack Reeves stood at the edge of his driveway in worn jeans and a faded work shirt, holding a cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm. The mailbox at the end of the gravel path was a dented black thing that had seen better decades, but it did its job. Jack opened it, expecting nothing more exciting than junk mail and a flyer for lawn service. Instead, a thick, official-looking envelope sat inside, its edges crisp and the return address printed in bold Z. Maple Glen Homeowners Association. He frowned. The HOA rarely contacted him, and when they did, it was usually nonsense. A note about his fence color, or a reminder about mowing heights, or a warning about the time he parked his truck too close to the curb. He tore the envelope open with his thumb and unfolded the letter. The paper was heavy, expensive, like they wanted him to feel the weight of authority. He read the first line once, then again, slower this time. Effective immediately, due to unpaid violation fees, the Maple Glen Homeowners Association has suspended your access to community water services until all fees are paid in full. For a few seconds, Jack just stared at it, trying to decide if this was some kind of joke. Then he snorted. The sound was low, bitter. "Suspended my water," he muttered. "That's rich." He read on, each line sounding more ridiculous than the last. The letter went on about noncompliance with community standards and failure to maintain approved landscaping aesthetics. Then, a paragraph about how all community utilities were subject to suspension for members in violation. Community utilities, he said under his breath, and then the laugh came. A deep, honest laugh that startled a crow off the telephone wire. He folded the letter neatly, like he might keep it as a souvenir, and slipped it into his back pocket. Out past his garden and the split rail fence, the sun caught the old stone building that sat on his land. The pump house. Solid, simple, about the size of a small shed, with a tin roof that flashed silver in the light. Beneath that building lay the well his grandfather had dug in 1982, the same well that had supplied clean, cold water to this patch of land for 40 years. Jack's family had sold off most of the farm long ago. The developers had carved the property into the subdivision that was now Maple Glen. But the one thing that never changed hands was the well. When they built the houses, the HOA made an agreement to pay Jack's family a small maintenance fee for the water rights. It wasn't much, but it was steady, and it gave him a quiet satisfaction to know the neighborhood's lifeblood still flowed from his land. And now the HOA thought they could suspend his access. He turned back toward the house, took a slow sip of his coffee, and smiled. Inside, the kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. On the counter sat his phone, blinking with a few unread messages. One from his daughter, one from his mechanic, and one from Cheryl Madsen, the HA president herself. He opened hers first. "Jack, please contact the board regarding your unpaid fines. Your water access has been temporarily disabled per HOA regulations. We can discuss payment options." He read the message twice, then set the phone down slowly like it might bite. Temporarily disabled. Jack walked to the sink and turned the faucet handle out of curiosity. A thin stream of water sputtered, choked, and then nothing but a hollow gurgle came out. He chuckled again, the kind of laugh that comes from disbelief as much as amusement. "All right," he said to no one. "You want to play games, Cheryl?" He grabbed his keys wallet and a worn leather folder that contained every document his grandfather ever signed about the property. He wasn't an angry man by nature, but there was a kind of quiet fire in him that burned hotter the calmer he got. The drive to the HOA office was short, maybe 5 minutes. But it was enough time for him to cool his head. He rolled down the truck window, let the wind whip at his hair, and thought about how people loved rules until they had to live by them. When he pulled in the parking lot of the HOA's temporary office, a beige trailer parked beside the community pool. 3 cars were already there. He could see Cheryl through the glass door, along with 2 other board members. They were sitting at a plastic table piled with binders and coffee cups, looking like they were running the world. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air smelled like stale coffee and toner. Cheryl looked up startled, then smiled the way someone smiles when they realize the person they've wronged just walked in. "Jack, glad you came in. We were just talking about my water," he interrupted softly. She blinked. "Yes, we sent notice. I got your notice." He set the folded letter on the table between them. "Thing is, you made a mistake." One of the other board members, a tall man with a tight tie and an even tighter expression, spoke up. "Sir, until your fees are paid, All utilities connected to HOA services are? Jack held up a hand. I know what the letter says. But you need to understand something before this gets embarrassing. He pulled out his phone and tapped a few times. A low, distant hum filled the air. The faint sound of machinery spinning up. It came from his land, half a mile away, through the pipes that fed every house in Maple Glen. The hum grew stronger for a moment, then stopped when he tapped again. That sound, he said evenly, is the pump for the well that supplies every drop of water you people drink, bathe in, or use to keep your hydrangeas alive. He leaned forward slightly. It's on my property. I own the rights. I maintain it. My grandfather signed that deal before most of you even moved in. Silence fell. The ceiling fan clicked as it rotated. Cheryl's mouth opened, then closed again. So when you say you've suspended my access, what you've really done, Jack said, his tone calm but sharp, is threatened to cut off something that doesn't belong to you in the first place. He straightened, slid the letter back toward her, and smiled, polite, but without warmth. I'd fix this fast if I were you. Because right now, technically, the HOA just shut off its own water? Cheryl swallowed. The man in the tie shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke. Jack turned to leave, pausing at the door. Oh, he said, glancing back, and you might want to check your sprinklers. They'll be dry by noon. He stepped out into the sunlight, the air clean and warm, and for the first time all morning, he felt genuinely awake. The game had started, and he wasn't planning to lose. The afternoon sun sat heavy in the sky, pouring heat across Maple Glen like a punishment. The air shimmered above the asphalt, cicadas screaming from the oaks that lined the sidewalks. Jack Reeves leaned against the side of the old pump house, arms crossed, watching the pressure gauges through the open door. The machinery hummed faintly, a low, steady heartbeat buried beneath the earth. The same heartbeat that kept this neighborhood alive. He'd checked every valve twice, listened to the soft rattle of the pipes, and confirmed what he already knew: everything was working perfectly. The EOA's suspension hadn't done anything on his end. They didn't have the authority or the equipment to touch his system. The only thing they could do was bluff. He tapped his phone screen, pulling up the monitoring app he'd set up years ago, one that let him adjust flow levels, pressure, and even shut off distribution if needed. The numbers glowed bright green. For now, everything flowed as usual. But Jack wasn't in the mood for usual. He stared toward the cluster of rooftops in the distance. The rows of manicured lawns, the white fences, the symmetrical driveways, and thought about that smug look on Cheryl's face at the meeting earlier. The way she'd said, "Suspended your access," like she was swatting a fly. He could still hear it. He sighed, pushed off the wall, and walked inside the pump house. The smell of damp concrete and old oil filled his lungs. Oddly comforting. He'd spent half his life maintaining this place, patching leaks, replacing bearings, keeping the system clean. He remembered being a boy, handing his grandfather tools, watching him work by the beam of a single hanging bulb. Water, the old man had said once, isn't power until someone else needs it. Then it's everything. Jack took out his phone again and stared at the control slider on the screen. He hesitated for half a second, then dragged it down a notch. Not a full shutdown, but enough that the pressure to the neighborhood would drop. Faucets would start sputtering, lawn sprinklers would spit dust. A test, just a small one. Within 10 minutes, his phone buzzed. It was Cheryl. He let it ring twice before answering. Morning, he said, even though the clock said 27 p.m. Jack. Her voice was tight, brittle. I'm getting reports from residents. Several homes have lost water pressure. Is there an issue with the system? Could be, he said mildly. Maybe the pump's tired. Hard to keep running when it's not being properly appreciated. Jack, please, she said, lowering her tone like she was speaking to a child. If there's a problem, we need to fix it immediately. The HOA manages utilities for everyone. Except this one, he interrupted. You don't manage this one, Cheryl. You lease it. There's a difference. There was silence on the line for a moment. Then she said, more softly, are you saying you've done something? He smiled faintly. I'm saying your office tried to play landlord with something that's not yours. And now your people are getting a taste of what that really means. You can't just... Jack, you're cutting off hundreds of residents, families, children. He let her talk, let the panic rise in her voice. The sound of it was almost satisfying, but it didn't make him happy. It just confirmed what he already knew. She'd gone too far, and now she was learning what it felt like to lose control. Look, he said finally, calm and even. I didn't shut anything off. I just eased back the flow. Think of it as maintenance. Preventative care. This is extortion, she snapped. No, he said, this is physics. And then he hung up. He pocketed his phone and walked back to the truck, the sun flashing off the windshield. From where he stood, he could see the rooftops again, and a few telltale signs that his maintenance was already noticeable. A sprinkler head sputtered to life, coughed, and went limp. A shiny SUV idled in a driveway while a man looked puzzled at his garden hose. By sunset, the neighborhood's rhythm had changed. Normally, evenings in Maple Glen meant the hiss of sprinklers, the laughter of kids playing with water balloons, the soft shimmer of green lawns under the fading light. Now it was quiet, uncomfortably quiet. A few confused residents stood in driveways, phones pressed to their ears. Calling the HOA, Jack sat on his porch with a cold beer, watching it unfold like a movie. The first visitor came around 7. It was Cheryl again, red-faced and sweating through her blouse. Her heels clicked sharply on his front walk. "Jack, we need to talk," she said, her tone clipped, but her voice already betraying desperation. He gestured toward the empty chair across from him. "Sure. Sit." She hesitated, then sat, fanning herself with a folder. "This isn't funny," she started. "You're responsible for an essential service. You can't just decide to." "I can," he interrupted, "because I own it. It's on my deed, my land, my name. You've been getting water from me since this neighborhood broke ground. Don't act like I'm some outsider." Cheryl pursed her lips, clearly fighting to stay composed. "There's a process for resolving disputes," she said. "There is," he said, nodding. "And usually it starts with you not turning off someone's utilities out of spite." She flinched, just a little. "Those fees are standard, Jack. Everyone pays them. You had multiple violations." "For what?" he asked. "For not planting OA-approved hydrangeas. For keeping my work truck in my own driveway." "That's the policy," she said. "That's your policy," he corrected. "Mine's a little simpler. You don't mess with what you don't own." They stared at each other for a long moment. The cicadas droned on, and the faint hum of the pump could still be heard in the distance. Steady, alive, waiting. Finally, Cheryl sighed, her tone softening. "Look, I don't want to fight. People are angry. They want answers. Just turn the water back up, okay? We can revisit your fines later." Jack leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You know, my grandfather told me something once. Said water keeps people honest. Because when you control it, you learn who respects you and who doesn't. I used to think that was just old man talk. But looking at you right now," he tilted his head slightly, "I think I get it." Her eyes hardened again. "Are you threatening the neighborhood?" He smiled. "No. I'm reminding it who's been keeping it alive all these years." She stood abruptly, gripping her folder like a weapon. "You're making a mistake, Jack. People won't forget this." He took a slow drink of his beer. "Neither will I." She turned on her heel and stormed off, her car's tires crunching over the gravel as she sped away. Jack watched her go, the amber light of dusk settling over everything. He sat there until the sky turned purple, then pulled out his phone again. He opened the control app, hesitated for a moment, and dragged the slider up halfway. Enough to restore water, but not full pressure. A peace offering, maybe, or just enough rope for them to hang themselves with later. The hum of the pump rose again, deep and alive beneath the earth. Jack closed his eyes and listened. The sound soothed him, like thunder rolling in the distance before a storm. For now, the neighborhood would have its water back. But he knew Cheryl wouldn't stop there. The board would meet. They'd whisper words like legal action and liability, and they'd try to find another way to box him in. That was fine. He'd been boxed in before. And if they wanted another round, well, he had the well. Literally, he stood stretched and looked out at the rows of dark houses, each one with its lights flickering on, the hum of air conditioners returning as the system stabilized. They'd never know how close they'd come to running dry tonight. Jack smiled faintly, drained the last of his beer, and murmured to the quiet street, "Let's see how thirsty they get next time."